In this picture book, the people of Garden Glen are afraid of the dark, but Millie Fleur reassures them that the dark isn't scary. You just need to get to know her. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book and talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. Christy Mandin is the author and illustrator of multiple picture books, including the New York Times bestselling Millie Fleur's Poison Garden. She joins us to talk about another picture book that features Millie Fleur. This time, Millie Fleur Saves the Night. Christy, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you for having me.
Well, last time we talked about Millie Fleur, she was educating her new town about her poison garden. And this time she's teaching them about the dark. So before we talk specifically about this book, tell us more about Millie and why you think kids have reacted so well to her.
I think it's because she gives kids permission to be weird, which I think we all start out weird, and then we, over time, learn to put on different masks to be more normal. But the truth is we're all still weird at heart to someone somewhere. And Millie she gives people permission to just let that thing about you that is unrepeatable out into the world and share it with people. So I think it's resonated with grown-ups and children alike for that reason.
Wonderfully weird is the choice of words you've used. And I think that's a wonderful choice because it tells people being weird can be a good thing. And as you pointed out the last time we talked, if we weren't for weird people, we wouldn't make a lot of progress in many areas of life.
That's right. We discussed astronauts are weird and musicians are weird, and all new ideas are weird because they're new. And then they get repeated and then they're normal. But they all start out new and weird. So, yeah.
Well, in this latest book, Millie Fleur Saves the Night, people think she's weird because she likes the night. And her house is the only house on the street that's not all lit up at night. So tell us more about the story people are going to find here.
Yeah, so if in book 1, in Millie Fleur's Poison Garden, the residents of Garden Glen were afraid of anything that's different, calling it poison, then in book 2, they're most certainly afraid of the dark, calling it dangerous. And so they light up the night. They have their spotlights on their houses and their spotlights on their gardens, and it's lit up like the noonday sun. And Millie Fleur is sad because she actually enjoys the dark because she has nighttime friends and a moon garden. And she's not seen any of her night friends, and her moon garden has struggled to grow. And so she sets out on a mission to welcome the dark back to Garden Glen and show her friends that the dark isn't scary. You just need to get to know her, and that the dark has a lot of things that it can offer, and that perhaps the dark is afraid of you, which starts a conversation about the things we're afraid of. We might actually be scary to them. So, yeah.
Well, that was the fascinating thing is you've personified dark here. The dark is actually a creature that, as you said, it's not really scary. You just need to get to know her. Mm-hmm. And if you get to know her, you embrace her, then she brings along a whole host of friends with her.
That's right. And I think it was important to personify the dark because these big abstract things, something that you can't hold, that you can't, put in a box or grab onto, it's often scarier. And so making the dark into a character, a very tangible thing, fills that gap. And that's what our imaginations like to do. We like to fill in gaps, right? And often with worst case scenarios, so I don't know if you remember, Dan, being a kid and laying in your bed at night and it's dark and there's the moon casts a shadow through the window and, maybe it's just a tree, but your brain goes wild in the dark and fills in those gaps of it's something scary. And so I think this personified darkness fills that gap for kids with something that's less threatening.
Christy, before we talk more about the story that you have in Millie Fleur Saves the Night, would you read a portion of it for us to give us a taste of what people will find here?
Yeah, of course. So, Millie Fleur saves the night. Flip right to the front page here. Garden Glen was afraid of the dark. Every evening when the sun dipped below the horizon, the townspeople raced home and switched on their lights. Spotlights shone on prize-winning gardens. Lanterns lit the pathways. Every house and yard in Garden Glen was as bright as the midday sun. Every house except Millie Fleur LaFay's, of course. At the bottom of a scruffy hill at the edge of town, a lone street lamp glowed outside Millie Fleur's garden gate. To the people of Garden Glen, Millie Fleur's house was terribly dark and mysterious. But to Millie Fleur, it wasn't dark enough. Since she moved to town, Millie Fleur hadn't seen a single night creature. Her moon garden struggled to grow. I have an idea, her mom said. After they took care of the street lamp, Millie Fleur waited for the return of the dark and her other nighttime friends. But Garden Glen's Lantern Committee was not happy about Millie Fleur's unlit house. It's dangerous, warned the mayor. It's scary, said the city planner. Who knows what the dark will bring with it, said the lantern keeper. But the dark isn't scary, Millie Fleur assured them. You just need to get to know her. And so she sets out on a mission to bring the dark back and encourage her neighbors to be brave.
And in her moon garden, you have, like you did with the poison garden, some creative flora.
That's right. Yeah. So in both books, I take names from real plants. So, ferns, moonflowers, those are all real. But then we give them fantastical attributes that put them squarely into Millie Fleur's fantastical world. So she has 40 winks fern, and she has twilight tulips. And let's see, what else does she have? She has snoozing sugar plums. Yeah, so she's got fantastical plants in this book, just like she did in Poison Garden.
And as you reveal in the book, many of these plants have a wonderful fragrance to them, and that brings in the kids at first, but they are just drawn to this smell and want to know what's going on in the moon garden.
Yeah, that's right. So we actually grow night blooming plants here in my garden. My husband and I keep honeybees in our back garden. And so we keep all kinds of plants. But we appreciate beneficial pollinators of all kinds. So during the day, we have our regular flowers that bloom for the honeybees. And at night, we have night blooming nicotania, and we have moonflowers, and we have 4 o'clocks that, they start to open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm fascinated by those because they smell. A night garden is so different than a daytime garden. You're having to plant for things that the moon can illuminate. So you have a lot of white blooms, but you're also doing a whole sensory experience with a moon garden. And they often just smell like candy or perfume. They're just fascinating to me. So that stuff just seeps out into my books.
So the kids come to discover what's going on in the moon garden. They get introduced to dark, and they find out that dark isn't so scary after all.
No, and in fact, the dark is actually scared of them, which I think is a good conversation starter, that the things we don't understand, that we instinctively, like our knee-jerk reaction is to be afraid of it or wary of it. Those things might actually be, or those people might actually be afraid of us. We might be the threatening thing in the story. And so I think it's a good conversation starter for understanding something, and being brave enough to understand it builds empathy. And then we all bring something to the table.
And they learn that if they overcome this fear of the dark, then they not only get to see the plants in the moon garden, but also all the animals that come out at night.
That's right. Animals. So flora and fauna and insects, all manner of insects, which this book was actually I actually wrote this book after stumbling upon a new to me insect in my yard that during the daytime, was just rather boring. But because I'm insufferably curious about it, I found out that it actually creates its own bioluminescent headlights at night. But I would have never known that if I wasn't curious about it. If I was just scared of that bug, I would have never known how cool it was at night. So yeah, they discover that the dark isn't scary. It just has a lot to offer. There's shooting stars and glowing mushrooms. Where I live, there's one called foxfire, which is a mushroom that glows bright enough at night that you could read by it. So there's a lot of cool things to be found in the dark.
And in the book, you encourage kids to obviously not be afraid of the dark, but also turn off the lights so that they can be brave and experience these things that they're missing out on.
Yeah. Yeah, because, the dark is half of our life. We can't eliminate the dark. And also, using darkness as a shorthand for anything that's bad is not just untrue, it's problematic. Lighting up the night doesn't make us safer. Understanding the night makes us safer. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for some really cool discussions with this book.
In the author's note, you share that you were afraid of the dark as a child. Why was it important for you to share this with your readers?
Because and you know what? I'll tell you a secret, Dan. I'm still a little bit afraid of the dark, but I understand the dark more now, so I can talk to myself and remind myself that there are ways to stay safe, that the dark itself isn't inherently scary. But yeah, because my own 6-year-old, he is classically afraid of the dark, just a classic kid fear. And I think that's one of our first fears, is being afraid of the dark. And then we kind of build on that. But if we can learn to be brave at an early age, it makes us so much more curious about our world. So yeah, I was afraid of the dark. And I think it's important that kids know that, because being afraid is the first step. Once you have recognized, I'm afraid of that thing, but let me figure out why. Let me figure out what is scary about that thing to me. And then the more you learn, the more you realize okay, I just didn't know. I just didn't know what it had to offer. So yeah, I don't want kids to think that I wasn't, that I was a brave kid. I wasn't. I'm still a little bit scared, but we can be brave and curious.
You are both the author and illustrator of these books. And as we discussed before, you say sometimes the author kind of causes problem for the illustrator because you'll think of something, but then now the challenge is you have to visualize it.
Yeah, I did that with this book too, Dan, because one thing I didn't think about from book 1 to book 2 was that in book 1, there is nary a street lamp. There is none of Garden Glen has a lamp post. And here in book 2, author me has said, Garden Glen lights up the night like the midday sun. And now illustrator me has had to figure out, well, how am I going to do that when in book 1, I didn't put any street lamps on the main, in the main housing area. So I had to get creative there. So yeah, author me is often creating problems for illustrator me to solve. And we get there in the end, but it's a push and pull.
And of course, you had to create those new wonderfully weird plants to be in the moon garden.
That's right. Yeah, creating something from nothing when it's not a thing that exists. I don't know. I go back and forth on if that's harder or easier, because I also have a nonfiction book coming out in a couple of weeks, and writing things that were real and fact. I think drawing those things might have been harder. Where if I've just made it up on, out of my imagination, nobody can say it's wrong because it doesn't exist in the real world. So the 40-winged fern can't be wrong because I made it up.
But now you've teased me. Tell me about this new book.
This one is with Simon & Schuster. It's a nonfiction picture book about the candy bombers during the Berlin airlift in 1948, who dropped candy to the children of West Berlin during the blockade. They dropped 23 tons of candy to the children. So it was quite an impressive feat.
Well, in addition to that, are we going to see more from Millie Fleur in the future?
Yes, so much more, Dan. You're not rid of me anytime soon. There is a Halloween-themed Millie Fleur book coming out next July, 2026. It's called Millie Fleur's Pumpkin Problem. Things go awry in Millie's garden, and it takes over the town. So she has to fix that little problem. And then Millie Fleur comes back in fall 2026 in another jacketed hardcover picture book. And then I have Millie Fleur every year until I think 2029 on deck. So lots of Millie Fleur. I think 5 more Millie Fleur books are on the way.
The picture book is Millie Fleur Saves the Night by Christy Mandin. Christy, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Dan. It was nice.
If you'd like to purchase Millie Fleur Saves the Night, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. Well, thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.